hand on your heart, look up at the sky, smile, and say, hey, I'm alive. Thanks for being alive with me today. Hey, thanks for joining me on this episode of Be Alive with Kate Manser. We are going to start with a story of something that happened to me just a couple of weeks ago that made me realize that I need to share this practice with you that is going to uplevel your life and the lives of those around you. First, I'm here in my studio in Marfa, Texas. I'm so happy you're here with me today. I'm having my afternoon brew, which lately I have been having 1 tea bag of yerba mate, 1 tea bag of hibiscus tea, and it makes this delicious sort of flowery, earthy, wonderful concoction that gives me a little boost of caffeine in the evenings. If you're sensitive to caffeine, you may want to put it a little earlier. The yerba mate, it sends you on a nice ride. And I don't want to keep you up all night. So 2 weeks ago, I woke up in the morning and immediately I knew that something was up with Pajamas. I tried to move her and she wouldn't be moved. She was alert and awake and was very disoriented. So I got out of bed. I turned on the light, and you guys, as soon as I looked at her face, her eyes were darting back and forth like she was in The Exorcist. I know that this is called horizontal nystagmus. So I Googled horizontal nystagmus canine, and it said it could be this thing called old dog vestibular disease, or it could be a stroke. I call the vet. I live in the middle of nowhere. The closest vet is in the next town over, 30 minutes away. I call him up. It's a Saturday. I call the emergency line, and this nice lady answers, and she's like, well, darling, we got plans this morning, but I'll see what we can do. You've called our house. So let me talk to the vet, my husband. She calls me back and she said, if you can be there in 30 minutes, we will see Pajamas. So I get Pajamas. I strap her into the front seat. I put blankets all around her. She's like, can't walk. She cannot walk. She's like totally out of her head, out of her mind. And I zoom to Alpine, the next town over, to get her into the vet. He takes a look at her and he looks at her ears and her eyes and asks some questions and says, your dog has had a stroke. Immediately, the crocodile tears start coming out of my eyes. He said, I'm going to give her some steroids to control any swelling that might be going on in her brain. And, I could check her in now and take her in and start giving her fluids and all this. And he said, you know what? Strokes, the symptoms typically pass in a couple of days. So if I were you, I would take her home and just keep her comfortable. What would you like to do? She was shaking in the vet, the bright lights and the unfamiliar. And I just was like, I'm going to take her home. Thank you so much. He gave her an injection of steroids and some pills and told me to just make sure that she appears to be improving over the coming days. So then we drove all the way back here to Marfa. And it was a wild day. So as we're sitting inside and I'm just trying to keep it quiet and, she can't move, she can't walk. Her eyes are still darting back and forth like crazy. That around noon, it begins to rain and then it begins to sleet and then it begins to hail. And then y'all, in mid-April in West Texas, it begins to snow, these big fat flakes, and then the wind kicks up and the snow gets stronger and heavier. And so I'm sitting in there with my dog who's just suffered a stroke, and outside in April, in spring, there's like blooms on the trees, and we are getting a blizzard with sideways snow. We get an accumulation of several inches. It was absolutely wild. And I'm just sitting there in my home with my dog that I care so much about, who has just gone through this crazy health experience of having a stroke. Did you even know that dogs could have strokes? Because I didn't. So the topic of today's episode is pre-grieving. Pre-grieving. Now, you might have heard this often referred to as anticipatory grief. I prefer to call it pre-grieving. Anticipatory grief, I don't know, it doesn't have quite the right vibe that I feel like this practice has. And I really believe that it is a practice. The person doesn't need to be terminal. Pajamas didn't need to have this stroke for me to pre-grieve her. In fact, Pajamas has had so many health problems over the years. I have been pre-grieving her for years. She's had 2 different types of cancer multiple times. I'm constantly getting these malignant masses removed from her body, all different types, mast cells, hemangiosarcoma. She's had 2 blown knees at different times. She's had things wrong with her ears, horrible, horrible allergies. She's broken a bunch of teeth that I had to have extracted. I got this dog for $5 at the shelter, and she has easily cost me 10 G's since then, just in health stuff. And guess what? I would do it all again. But pre-grieving has been a part of my practice with Pajamas really since she was about 7 and when she had the first incidence of mast tumors on her. Pre-grieving is such an important practice for so many reasons. It brings presence. It allows us to cherish what we have. It allows us to reduce rather the shock that occurs when a death happens so that we can just get to the grieving process. It allows us to visualize the kind of leader that we want to be when someone dies so that we can be the best guardian and steward of their memory and their lives. This is what we're going to talk about today. So what is pre-grieving? Pre-grieving is a process in which you imagine how you want to be or how you will feel when someone that you care about dies. Can be a parent, a friend, a dog, a cat, a ferret. It doesn't matter. This can be a visualization practice that you do. It can be a meditation. It can just be something that you do when you drive. There's this old Buddhist practice that says every time you hug someone, imagine that it's the last hug that you ever give them, which is in effect sort of a pre-grieving activity. Here are the benefits and why I invite you to consider bringing this practice of pre-grieving into your life. Number 1, pre-grieving can allow you to get acquainted with and discover the emotions, often unexpected, that you might experience when someone dies. The example that just happened with Pajamas was while I was driving to this vet on Saturday, I really was just imagining her not being around and that this was the end. She might not make it, or even if she didn't die that day, maybe she would die soon. And I was struck with this emotion where I felt profoundly alone. So I have been very single intentionally for the past 2 years. I haven't been dating at all. I've really just wanted to focus on me and my business and life and enjoying life. So I've been off the apps. I haven't been dating. And I realized that Pajamas is my sidekick. Pajamas is my ride or die. And when I'm alone in this 2-year period of being totally single, I'm not really alone. I've got this amazing sidekick soul dog next to my side all the time. So when I'm sitting in my RV or here in my studio, there's another being here. I'm not truly alone. And so I had this very confronting feeling that when Pajamas dies, oh my God, I'm going to be really alone, like for the first time ever in my life. Whew. And that was just I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that emotion to come up. But in this pre-grieving, as I was driving her to the vet, I realized that this aloneness, this solitude, this loneliness that I'm anticipating came up. It has been so valuable to feel that and then now get the opportunity to examine it before it actually happens, right? So Pajamas is still alive. She has actually made basically a 100% recovery. We're now 2 weeks out from the stroke. She's doing great. She's still an old dog. She's still stubborn as hell. But what I was able to do is after I was confronted with this feeling of profound aloneness that I will feel when she dies, in the days that followed, I started reflecting on it and journaling on it. And I was able to come to kind of a resolution. I made peace with it. Number 1, I felt that this period of aloneness is going to be very important for me, that there's something that I need to forge within me in that period of aloneness and truly standing alone, myself, Kate, hard as it might be, confronting as it might be, that it's really important for my personal and spiritual soul growth. And number 2, I have this sense that it's not going to last that long. that I will be alone for a while, like truly without a pet, without a partner. I just have this feeling that's how it's going to go down. But that I do have a partner that is on the way, whether it lasts a few days, a few weeks, months, or even a couple of years, that I'm alone without pajamas or any pet, that there will be another person who comes into my life and is a partner for however long me and that person are meant to be together. So really coming to peace with like, okay, this aloneness is going to happen and I need to do it for my soul and I'm capable of it. I can start feeling through those emotions and knowing that it won't last forever. Once I was able to examine that and feel that in my intuition has been so useful, because now I feel that when Pajamas does pass away, that I will know what to do. I'll have dealt with some of these emotions. I'll know what's coming. I'll be ready. That doesn't mean that I might not feel alone or I might not feel lonely. I'm sure that I will. That's part of the process. But it won't be a shock that I'm feeling this profound aloneness. I'll have dealt with that in advance through pre-grieving Pajamas and imagining what my life will be like without her. Through doing that, I'm able to confront this totally unexpected, challenging, complex emotion so that I can begin working on it now. That brings me to a second reason that pre-grieving is so important. Oftentimes, we are in denial that people die. Like cognitively, we know, but honestly, like it's a shock. So what happens is when someone dies, especially unexpectedly, we have to spend so much time and energy dealing with the shock that that person or dog died at all before we can even get to the process of grieving. And trust me, I am an expert on this because I did it so hardcore. In 2014, I had 3 friends die in the span of 6 months from unrelated, unexpected events, and they were all around my same age. I had never thought about mortality and death before. So when that happened and these 3 friends died, I didn't even get a chance to begin grieving them for a while because I was dealing with the truly life-altering shock that young people can die and it can happen at any time and it can happen with no warning. So pre-grieving as a mortality awareness process will allow you to become acquainted with this notion, not just cognitively, but spiritually, psychologically, and in your life, that people will die and dogs will die and cats will die, so that when they do, you expect it. You've become zen with this notion that death is as beautiful and profound as birth, and that it is a rite of passage for every being, person, flower, animal, blade of grass, tree that has ever lived. We will all die. And by doing that through this pre-grieving process, when that being does die, you're not going to have to deal with this guttural, or at least it was for me. It was guttural shock that people can die. I don't want anybody else to have to go through that because it's not necessary. Grief is necessary. We're all going to go through grief. There will be some shock when someone around you dies, right? But the guttural shock of not having really done the work to acknowledge and embrace death creates this guttural shock that's totally not necessary. By understanding and appreciating the beauty of life and death, you can avoid that shock and you can get to the business of missing that person and missing that dog and going through that beautiful rite of passage that is the grief process. So we've gone through 2 benefits now of pre-grieving. Number 1, it helps you look at and discover any potential unexpected emotions that you might have. Number 2, it helps you manage and perhaps alleviate some of the shock of mortality if we can become aware of that. Number 3, really a big benefit of pre-grieving is, especially I discover this like when I think about my parents dying or my dog dying. Grieving can help us visualize how we want to show up for that person. The reason that it's beneficial or perhaps easier with a dog or a parent is because we feel this sense of guardianship with our dogs, especially. And of course, as we get older, oftentimes the roles can shift with our parents and we end up becoming their guardians in a way as maybe some of their faculties and abilities decline. If we get so caught up in grief and so caught up in shock that we wilt like a flower, we're not showing up for these people that we care about so much the way that we could and the way that maybe we wish that we would. So here's the example. With Pajamas, as I'm pre-grieving her, I'm also imagining, like, as her guardian and her protector and her ride or die, what do I need to do to ensure that she has the most beautiful passage across the Rainbow Bridge? When I noticed that her eyes that morning were going crazy with that nystagmus, it was scary for sure, and tears started coming out of my eyes, but I didn't want her to see because I didn't want her to be too scared. So I looked at her eyes and then I looked away and tears were coming out and I was like, and then I looked at her again. It's like, it's going to be okay, Pajamas. You're totally fine. We're going to get this taken care of. And then I'd look away and be like, because I want to make sure that I am there for her as her protector, whether she's sick or dying. It's my job to care for her and make sure that she has the highest possible experience. So when she dies, if I need to euthanize her, if she doesn't die naturally or I decide to let her go peacefully earlier, then I am going to be right there with her in the room, just holding her face and touching her and telling her how beautiful she is and how much I love her. And it's my duty to escort her out of this life and into the next, because that's what I want. I am her leader. I am her guardian. I am her protector. And I feel the same for my parents and my friends. Like, I don't want to wilt like a daisy in grief. I want to just be there and be this leader that carries out their wishes, that is full of heart and that is full of awareness and is a witness to their passing and does what needs to be done to honor their life. If I'm so caught up in grief because I haven't done any pre-grieving, that I'm not going to be as useful in that time as I would when I have done some of this pre-grieving work and visualized how I want to show up. So think about it. How do you want to show up if you are at the bedside of your parent or your best friend or your dog? What energy do you want to take on? Do you want to be a mess, or do you want to be emotional and scared, but also there for them and present and loving, right? That's what pre-grieving helps me to do, is it helps me visualize, how do I want to show up and explore that, so then I can try that on. I can try those clothes on and imagine, like, okay, when you're really sad, when Pajamas is dying, how can you also be this guardian and protector and steward of her life and death? The fourth benefit of pre-grieving is really beautiful. Since Pajamas has had her stroke and I've done some of this pre-grieving work, I am so aware that she is alive and that she is not dead and she did not die that day. I have just been cherishing my time with her. I often am looking at my phone and like, oh, I should be playing with my dog, but I'm like doing my thing on my phone. Since this happened 2 weeks ago, I have been so much more present with her. Again, going back to the Buddhist practice of imagining that when you hug someone, it's the last time that you'll get to hug someone. When we pre-grieve, when we're aware of the mortality of the beings around us and of ourselves, it brings this added, elevated value to the time that we have, because they're not dead. Even if they're on their deathbed, they are not dead yet. You're alive, they're alive. And this time is so precious. And that's what living like you might die tomorrow does, is it elevates the value of the present moment to this absolutely profound level. So if you've been feeling like too distracted lately and not spending quality time with your family or friends, not saying the things that need to be said, not sharing your heart, invite this practice of mortality awareness, living like you might die tomorrow, and pre-grieving into your life, and notice how much more present you become. Notice how your fear reduces about saying the thing that needs to be said and sharing your heart. Notice how you become so much more aware of the beauty of that being in the present moment and everything around you. Smart people, wise people, evolved people have the capacity to pre-grieve and confront in a very gentle, beautiful way the mortality that is part of being alive. Now, remember, when it comes to pre-grieving, you are in control of your experience. Whether you do it in a meditation, a visualization, or just something that you go through in your mind while you're driving, you're in control. There can be fear that comes with the experience of pre-grieving. You can step out of your pre-grieving visualization at any time and say, oh, I've had enough. Or you can say, oh, this is just a visualization. Like if you really start getting worked up, you can say, this is just a visualization. I'm going to take on this like leader role and imagine it in a totally different way. So remember that this is your pre-grieving experience. As you pre-grieve, be kind to yourself. Have a journal nearby so that you can reflect on any emotions or insights or fears that come up, and use this as an opportunity to appreciate the value of being alive and not succumb to the fear of death. That's really, I think, a cardinal aspect of pre-grieving, is realizing and inviting into your practice the reality that, again, you're not dead. They're not dead. And as you engage in this pre-grieving practice, have a bias toward personal and spiritual growth. When I was confronted with these feelings of profound aloneness that I might feel when Pajamas dies, it was important for me to ask myself, okay, what are you meant to learn here? Because when someone dies that we care about, we're always meant to learn something. They're not necessarily dying to teach us a lesson. They're dying because we all die. But in that experience, we are all afforded the opportunity to learn and grow in a new way. So keep that in mind, that the loss experience is a profound opportunity to learn new things and grow. It's through the fire. It's hard. It is difficult. Grief is truly a rite of passage that is one of the most complex emotions that we can feel. So as you go through the pre-grieving process, be kind to yourself and self-soothe when you need to. Step out of your pre-grieving meditation if it feels too much. You can always come back to it later. Said journal out your feelings, and keep in mind that death is as beautiful as being born. It is as natural as being born. It is truly this profound completion of the life that you have led, that Pajamas has led, that your parents, your friends, right? Like it is this capstone, and it is difficult and scary, but also truly beautiful. I often cry during my pre-grieving. I'm really feeling those emotions, and that's really beautiful, to just allow those emotions to well up, to let them out, and to remember that those emotions are commensurate with the love that I have for that being. It all comes down to love. It all comes down to love. This whole thing, pre-grieving, is about love. It's about being a steward for that being that you love when it is their time to go. It is being loving towards yourself in the lessons and growth that you'll experience through this loss. It's showing up in a way that you can be love in everything that you do. It truly all comes down to that. Thank you for listening to this episode of Be Alive with Kate Manser. Truly, I take it as no small honor. You have so much out there you could be listening to. So the fact that you took this time with me and my show, honestly, means absolutely the world to me. I hope that you got some meaning, some purpose, a little dash of aliveness, and definitely some inspiration out of what you heard today. That is always, always my goal. If you liked what you heard, please share this episode with a friend, with a confidant, with a mentor. Please, more, darling. Always more, excess, everything. We want it all in this life. So share it and go on your app of choice and leave some stars, leave a review. It helps me buy food for Pajamas, and it helps more people find this show so that we can all live just profoundly alive together. It's a beautiful day, y'all. Thank you for being here.